Hi everyone, welcome to Make Moments Matter, a music education podcast, where I share lesson ideas, songs, games, and inspiring things for your elementary music classroom. My name is David Rao, and I am the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. This episode of the podcast is a replay containing the audio version of a Musical Mondays live video. If you're not familiar with Musical Mondays, every Monday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I go live on Facebook and Instagram to share about the lessons that I'm using in class with my students. I give a recap of my kindergarten through 5th grade lessons, and then do a deep dive about one grade level and share the books, instruments, songs, and process that I use to teach the lesson to kids. This podcast episode contains all the audio from the Musical Mondays video, but if you'd like to see a replay of the video itself, you can find a link to the archived video on YouTube when you click the link in the notes for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Here's the show. Hey everyone, my name is David Rao, and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on YouTube, and a variety of other places when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. Today is week 13 of the Musical Mondays videos, and I'm excited tonight to talk a little bit about some of my primary grade lessons. I'm going to talk specifically about what I'm doing right now this week in 1st grade and 2nd grade. 1st grade is a Nutcracker theme lesson, 2nd grade is a food and rhythm theme lesson, and I'll get to that in just a minute. I'm excited to share sort of how I've done these in the past and how I'm doing them now and why I've made those changes, and I'd love to get some of y'all's feedback on some of that. Okay, but before I do that, a couple quick things. If I talk about a book or resource or whatever that you might be interested in, there's a whole page on my blog dedicated to the links that I talk about in these videos. You can either go to makemomentsmatter.org and click the drop-down tab on video to find this year's Musical Mondays videos, or if you're listening to this, at the bottom of whatever caption for this video, sound, podcast, whatever you're listening to, you should be able to find a direct link to the links page if you're interested. Also, you can join in the conversation. There's a Facebook group dedicated to music ed and specifically some of the things we talk about in these videos. And that if you want to find that, it's Every Moment Matters Music Education Community. You can join, ask questions, make friends. It's a great place to be. Okay, two more quick updates. So everyone knows Thanksgiving just happened, and this is Cyber Monday or whatever, where a lot of people find great deals online. Well, guess what? Oh my gosh, TPT, Teachers Pay Teachers, is also having a sale. So if you want to get some resources for Christmas or next semester or whatever, you want to brighten up your room, bulletin boards, all sorts of stuff, you can find a big sale on TPT. There's 25% off in my store. You can find that. There's a link to that on the links page, but also just know that if you add the code CYBER22 at checkout, you get up to 25% off in everything in my store and some other stores as well. Also, if you have ever in the past purchased from me one of my Rockin' All Year bulletin board sets, it's like every month I choose 30 different musicians who are born in that month. They're featured in that bulletin board. There's a little profile about each person, their birth and death dates, if they've passed away. There's a calendar that shows the current year and all the birthdays. I've had it out for 7-ish years. And anyway, every year I update the files. So if you have purchased those in the past and you're like, I want the calendars for 2023, all those files have been updated. So that you can go in and when you put them out next year, you can add the calendar for 2023. Also, every year around this time, I go back and I check, and if any of those musicians have passed away in the past year, or an important detail's changed, or they just won a really big Grammy or whatever, I update some of those files, and if you go to your My Purchases, you should be able to find those files, and it'll say like, I've made an update to, whoever, Leanne Rimes or whatever, or I changed the picture for Harry Styles or whatever. I always make sure I add those updates in case you're interested and you want to know this is what's changed. Okay, that's the last of the details. So TPT sale, and I've updated all those files if you bought those things in the past. They're all updated for 2023. Okay, so today I want to talk to you about my first grade lesson, which is a Nutcracker theme lesson, and then I also want to talk about second grade, which is a food and rhythm themed lesson. But before I talk about first grade, I've got to just show you the coolest thing that I got from my friend Jody, who's watching. Jody made me this amazing beanbag with Nutcracker like fabric, and I have no idea where she got it. I'm sure she could comment and tell you all. But I just want to say that I love it. And I have like a stack of to-do things on my desk at school. And so I just set this there to like make me happy every time I look at it. Because generally I'm not happy when I look at that stack of things. And so this just like sits there and is like, hey, look at this stack of things you need to do. Anyway, it's amazing. If I had more of this fabric, I would attempt to sew some beanbags. I would probably be really bad at that. I can like darn a sock and fix a seam, like hand sew, but I'm not good at. Anyway, Jody made this. It's really cool. I'll ask her where she got the fabric. Nutcracker, what? Okay, so anyway, I teach the Nutcracker every year. I teach versions of it to different grades. So, but I don't teach like, I don't like show the whole ballet to every grade every year. I don't do that. Kindergarten, they get a little bit of exposure to it. I read a book, and we maybe watch the Fantasia version, maybe watch a couple clips of the ballet. First grade, we do the lesson I'm about to talk to you about. Second grade, we do a lesson with music from the Trepak with Artie Almeida's lesson about ribbon wands. It's in her book, Parachutes, Ribbons, and Scarves, Oh My. Super great lesson. Third grade, we actually watch the ballet, and a lot of people have their favorite version of that they watch. I love to use the one from the Royal Opera House in the UK. It is like a definitive version. There are a bunch of different versions that are like great versions, and this is a super great one. You can find a DVD copy through the BBC. It may also be available streaming somewhere or pirated on YouTube. I don't know. Some people really like the New York Ballet version. Some people like I don't know, some recorded versions. There are a lot of different thoughts. My favorite is the one from the BBC. I just think because it has like some really cool stuff, and it's just really well done. And I've talked in other videos about how I share that. I don't just like press play and let it roll. I'm basically talking the whole time, giving commentary, giving ideas. But I've talked about that before in a different video. So if you're interested, I can link you to that. Fourth grade and fifth grade, we're so busy with concerts and other stuff, we don't really get too much Nutcracker stuff. But because like third grade, we like watch a good portion of it. In fourth grade and fifth grade, they don't ask. I don't feel the need to share more of that. And there are lots of other things we can do in December with those grades. But in first grade, for the last couple of years, I've done this lesson with the march, the bum, 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 bum. And I've really tried, because in the younger grades, we talk a lot about contrasting sounds, contrasting sections, tempo, things like that. And so I've been really trying to like compare, contrast in this song, because I thought it was a great example of like two different sounds. And I think that it is. Because there's the bum, 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 right? Like that part is easy to contrast with. You know, like the march versus like the running around sort of thing. I think that's pretty easy. But in the first section, in the first bigger part, there's the bum, 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 and then there's also another part in that sort of A section. It's like bum ba da da dum bum 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 ba da 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 da, which like for first graders is tricky because it sounds like what they've just heard, but not enough of a difference for them to be like, this is a B section or this is an A prime. They can't really differentiate like that. So for them, it's like a continuation of what they've already heard. So I've always sort of struggled with like, how do I use this example? How do I make it more effective? How do I make this lesson more effective? So what I did this year, I'll just sort of share an update of what I've done this year. So we start out by just talking about nutcrackers, and we look at a couple nutcrackers. I've got a couple with me. So we look at a couple nutcrackers. Again, in kindergarten, we read a book about it. We watched a little bit of the ballet. We talked a little bit, watched a little bit of Fantasia. So in this first lesson, I say, if a nutcracker, is standing, like, look how it's standing. It's like very rigid, very just like straight, and so it does not look relaxed, right? And look, its arms are straight, its legs are straight. It's just like standing super nice and tall. It's not slouching. Here's another one. Look, this one's even holding, some sort of scepter or something. And even though its arm is bent, it's not just like bent. It's like bent at a right angle. It's bent at a really, really hard angle, right? And so there's like nothing about these nutcrackers that seems relaxed. So if I were a nutcracker and I were going to move and I was going to walk, and I show them a couple examples, would I walk like this, do you think? And they're like, yeah. And they're like a robot. I'm like, yeah, sort of like a robot. Because like it's almost like everything is stiff. It's sort of hard to move because, my arms and legs are just like straight. I can't even like bend my knees. Neither of these nutcrackers, neither of them have their knees bent, do they? And they're like, they don't. And I say, would a nutcracker move like this? And I try and like move sort of smooth and like a very sharp contrast, right? Like relaxed, something different. And they're like, no, the nutcracker would not move like that. I'm like, right, but how could it move? And so in their, dot spots around the room, I say, before you even get up, how else could a nutcracker, how would it, like the top half, the torso of a nutcracker, how would it move? You're going to move it. Okay, great. Now stand up, but don't move through the room, just non-locomotor. Show me how the nutcracker might move if they were going to move just a little bit. And so we model some of that, we play with some of that. And then we try it locomotor, moving through the room, Knees can't bend, arms, either they're straight down at your side and maybe your shoulders can move so that your arms can swivel a little bit, or maybe you have your elbow bent but you can't like bend and you're sort of just like playing with that idea of like what would it look like if this nutcracker were to come to life and to move a little bit. And then I say, okay, now I want you to move in a totally, completely different way. All your joints can move. All of your body can move. You can sort of think about like sort of swimming through the space, something completely and totally different. Make sure you're moving all your body parts so that it's, more fluid, more, different, just to give them a really good contrast. And then we talk about, okay, let's say the nutcracker is moving, but now the nutcracker is like, it's sort of like the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz, slowed down even more. Its joints are even slower, even stiffer, hard to move. And, how would it move? And we play with that, and I say, now, the part that's fluid and excited, can you move even a little quicker? So it's even more different. So there's the slow and stressed out and the sort of, completely rigid, the nutcracker part. And then there's the fluid, moving, excited, faster, other part, right? Okay, so that's just sort of contrasting the bum, 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 bum. That's the more rigid sort of nutcracker. And there's the we're moving and grooving and sort of more fluid through the space, right? That doesn't solve my problem in the A section. So what I came up with was the next step was I sat at the piano and I'd play sort of like chord, 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 chord. Which sort of movement would that link up with? What would that be more like? And then like something, I add the pedal, something a little bit more fluid. What would that add up? Was trying to make those match, help them make those matches between like the movement and the sound, because we're going to do that in a second with a recording from the Nutcracker. So my idea of how to fix that like A section, A prime, like that are very similar, but I want to show contrast. As we're playing the song, I have them start out by moving and walking like the Nutcracker, bum, 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 through that first section. When we get to like the A prime, dun da 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 dun 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 da 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 da, that sort of section, I say, great, keep doing the Nutcracker, but don't move your feet. You need to do it only non-locomotor. Right, so when they do that, they're feeling a very different movement, right? So like the first one is locomotor, they can move through the space. The second is the same sorts of movement, just non-locomotor. They can tell there's a contrast because their movements are very different, either locomotor or non-locomotor. But the actions, the gestures themselves stay the same. They've not moved into the relaxed sort of, dancing part. They haven't gotten to that. So that sort of has helped me solve that, like, how do I explain? Yes, it's similar, but it's not the same. So their actions and their movements are still that, like, Nutcracker arm can't really move, but the locomotor versus non-locomotor provides a really great contrast. So if I'm remembering the form right, I think it goes A prime A, B, A prime A. I can't remember exactly. And maybe the last A is shorter. But we just sort of played through it and tried it out today with my first grade class, and it worked so well. And it was just really cool because they did know the exact moment that you switch from, like, the Nutcracker moves to, like, the mice moves, like the dancing, moving, relax movement. They could tell you exactly where that was, and they could differentiate between where's the locomotor and where's the non-locomotor. So that was really, really cool. At the end of class, we had like 2 more minutes, and I was like, oh, what do I, so we sat down, and I was like, okay, show me more of those Nutcracker moves if you were non-locomotor, if you had to stay in your space. And I had a lot of, like, arm moves, and I was like, great, okay, keep doing that, except now you cannot use your arms. And they were like, okay. So then there was a lot of, like, neck bending, neck moving, sort of like, robot-esque, but just with like through their neck. I said, great, but now you can't use your neck. And they were like, okay. And so then I had prompted them earlier, how else does a Nutcracker move? And we talked about, its mouth opens. Okay, so then we had a lot of, like, jaw movement. I was like, great. But now you can't move your arms, and you can't move your neck, and you can't move your jaw. How else are you going to show that stiff Nutcracker movement? And so then it just became really fascinating what they did. I had some eyebrows. I had some kids moving their eyes. I had one kid trying to, like, flare their nose, like, try, like, all these different things to see, so they could have these, like, sort of stark movements. I had kids, like tilting their head, all sorts of stuff, blowing out their cheeks, like all sorts of hilarious things. And it was just so interesting to see what they could come up with when I gave them those restrictions. And then also I imagine the next time we do this, they're going to incorporate some of that in those non-locomotor moments. And it was so fun to try. So anyway, try that out, see, or try versions of that. Or if you like, hey, this was a cool idea, I'm going to add it to whatever my own lesson is. Don't feel like you have to do my lesson, but like, just, this is what happened with me today and with my students. And this lesson is developed over 3 or 4 years. And so this is sort of just where I went with it. I'd love to see if you do something similar, sort of what works for you or what has changed for you, or how that might look. Okay, so that's my first grade lesson with Nutcrackers. My second grade is another lesson that's evolved. I look back to when I first shared this, and I think in 2019, I shared this lesson with a poem I made up called Everything Stew, where I talked about Thanksgiving and sort of what happens at my grandma's house. So I start the lesson with my second graders talking about, like, what's a food that you ate on the break? Thanksgiving food, not Thanksgiving food. And some kids will say, like, turkey or mashed potatoes or whatever. And then some kids are like McDonald's. And some kids like Pop-Tart. And I'm like, cool. I didn't give you parameters. I didn't say it must be a Thanksgiving themed food. It doesn't have to be. But what's a food that you maybe had? Okay, so we go through all of that. I tell them this long sort of story about when I was little and going to my grandma's and all the food she'd make. And if you're interested in that, like, intro, like the tale of what happened at grandma's, I linked it on the links page to this video I did in 2019. It details the whole lesson if you're interested and you want to hear more about that. But I go through and we, like, learn this poem, chicken, pepper, cauliflower too. Let's go make some everything stew. And we add in, then there's a part where there's like a question answer. What will you add to the stew? I'll put in some pumpkin too, right? So, like, I give them prompts up on the screen, some different foods that maybe they would add into the stew. Like I said, that's all detailed in a lesson I've already shared. What happened differently this time was I had a really squirrely class who was acting just nuts. It was the end of the day. It's the first day back after Thanksgiving break, and I was like, oh heavens, this is gonna be great. So anyway, I was like, I just need to approach this a little differently. So we did all of the sort of preamble, the talking about everything stew, talking about foods. We did all that the same. I put them into small groups, and then I gave them these bags of cards. And on the cards are different foods. So like this one says popcorn. It says the word popcorn, has a picture of popcorn, a little clip art, and then ta. Here's another example. This one says cheeseburger, picture, word, and then the rhythm. Ta, ta-dee, or ta-tee-tee, depending on what you say at your school. Apple cider, ta-dee, little picture, word, right? Okay, so I've got a bunch of these little bags of words, all sorts of different foods, baked potato, tea, popsicle. This specific bag, so if you're interested in getting something like this, I have a set of these with Thanksgiving specific words. So turkey, cranberries, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, stuff like that. And then the one I'm showing right now is non-holiday specific. So this is like food you'd see all year long. So like popsicle, mushroom, grapes, all sorts of corn, things that are not necessarily Thanksgiving related. So you could do with either. I like having both for different occasions. With my students, I use the Thanksgiving words. And I have those here. Let me show a quick example. So maybe I can show, yeah, these are the Thanksgiving words. So like, okay, cookie, caramel apple, turkey, baked potato, cranberry. There's some overlap with regular foods. Cheese, salt, corn, some things you might find normally, but also some words that are very Thanksgiving centric. Okay, so what I did was I had kids in groups of 2 or 3, and in other lessons before, I would get them going right away, trying to make like a word chain, trying to make a sort of a rhythm out of it. And this time I was like, no. Okay, so what I said is, okay, first I want you to see if you can find one food that is sweet and one food that is savory. And so I had them go through and try and find, great. Okay, now I want you to find one food that's a snack and one food that's like a main dish. Okay, great. So I went through and then I want you to find one dessert and one drink. And so they're pulling these cards, they're looking through, sifting through all the cards. And then I say, okay, now I want you to see if you can find one food, but this food, I'm going to have you be specific. This food, you need to find a food that only has one sound in its name. So for example, like dog. If you clap the word dog, well, it's not a food, that's just a regular word. Or ball. If you clap when you say the word, it only has one sound. Like, let me give you an example of one that has more than one sound. Like if you said let's see, if you said baseball, that has 2 sounds, right? So that would not work for this example. So look through, see if you can find a food with only one sound. So they're going through, and they're small groups of 2 or 3, and for your group, okay, what's an example? Someone's like pear. Great, that's a great example. Okay, what's another? Okay, grape. That's a grape example. Okay, so anyway, so they go through and they try that. And then I say, great, now see if you can find a food with 2 sounds. Okay, so they go through and they're trying, cherries. Right, okay, great, let's see. What about popcorn? Sure, exactly. Okay, what about a food with 3 sounds? Great, so we look through, we find some different examples. Cheeseburger, blueberries, whatever. Broccoli. And then I said, okay, now see if you can find it with 4 sounds. They go through and they're looking, okay, they find, different examples. Where are my 4 examples? Apple cider. I was like, in this batch, where are they? Someone's been messing with my cards. Good Lord. Baked potato. Okay, but they're in there. And then I said, okay, see if you can find a card with 5 sounds. I know that there are no cards with 5 sounds. And then I was like, I'll give you $10 if you can find a card with 6 sounds. And they're like, oh, and then they're looking, can't, they don't exist. I'll give you $30 if you can find a card with 7 sounds. And then kids are like trying to piece 2 cards together. I'm like, nope, 1 card. So we went through and did that. And then I said, you know what? When I was asking for 1 sound and 2 sound and 3 sound foods, did I give you help at all with that? And they're like, no, you didn't. I was like, what about the cards? Did the cards help you? And they're like, oh, yeah. And so then we start talking about like there's a connection between the ta and the rest. That's a 1 sound. Or I say, look at all your 1 sound foods. Is there something similar? Yeah, all of them should have a ta rest. What about your 2 sound foods? All of them should have a ta. What about your 3 sound foods? Now this is where it gets tricky because it could have a ta-dee, or a ta-dee ta. Okay, but 4 sound foods, they should all have ta-dee. So 2 sets of 8th notes. And so when they're going through, they're now realizing, oh, the sounds, the syllables match the rhythms that are on the cards. Okay, great. So I say, actually, I don't know if you've noticed this, but on the wall, I have examples of all of these different food, or all these different sets of sounds. So like here's one, ta, rest. And its ring is purple around the outside. I say, okay, can you find an example of this? Ta, rest, food. Okay, so they already sort of did that. We go through and I say, find a two-sound word, two-sound food, three-sound food. Really the trickiest are these two. The yellow card has ta, ta-dee, and the blue card has ta-dee, ta. Can you find a food that is a ta, ta-dee food, a yellow food? And so they go through and they look through things, foods that are ta, ta-dee. Okay, and we find those. And I say, now can you find a blue food, ta-dee, ta? And by yellow and blue, I'm talking about the backing color, the construction paper that is behind the image that I'm, showing the kids up in the room. It's not. I don't mean like a yellow food like banana or lemon. I mean like, does it have the rhythm ta, ta-dee, or does it have the rhythm ta-dee, ta? And then we talk about, because this is always the hardest part, is one-sound foods, two-sound foods, four-sound foods. Those are easy for kids to understand. It's the three-sound foods that are really tricky, because you're either going to have a food that is one sound plus two sounds, or it's two sounds plus one sound, and how do you differentiate that? So I ask kids, okay, I have a food, let's see, apple pie. Would that be yellow or would that be blue? And so we talk about how do you break down the word. Well, apple, how many sounds are in that? 2. How about pie? How many sounds are in that? 1. Okay, so would that be a blue card or a yellow card? Would it be ta-dee-ta or would it be ta-ta-dee? And we start talking about some of those words. It's really great if you have compound words like pumpkin pie, apple pie, any sort of a lot of those pies are great examples. Chocolate cake, or I mean foods that are like that. If you have ta-dee, then you get into some words that are a little bit trickier, but you can still find some great examples in there of ta-dee. You can hot chocolate, right? Or you can find blueberries is another great one. But especially compound words are really easy because you can have them break down each of the words. How many sounds in that? How many sounds in the other? So pumpkin pie is great. Pumpkin is 2 sounds. Pie is 1. You wouldn't say pumpkin pie. You wouldn't say pumpkin pie. You'd say pumpkin pie, right? And so having them sort of differentiate that. So in this lesson today, what I did differently was I had them look at foods first, and I talked about the sounds in them before I ever talked about the rhythms. So now that I'm talking about the rhythms and the foods, I found that today with this class, and hopefully tomorrow with their class, it's going to be easier for them to make the connection or make the differentiation on those 3 sound words. That's my hope. Because that's always the part I think that is the trickiest for them. The next step then is to make a word chain. So like 8 different foods in a row. They're going to make a set that they like based on either the foods or the rhythms, and then we're going to play it, we're going to clap it, we're going to play on non-pitch. What my kids are going to do is we're going to write down and save these. So if you get these rhythm, I call them rhythm sorts, and I have them on my TPT. I call them rhythm sorts, but if you get these, one of the things in there is there are 30 different food words. All of them have one of these 5 different bricks of the pairings of rhythms. And also there's a worksheet in there. So what my kids are going to do is we're going to make our word chain with the foods, and then we're going to write it down, because later on in the year, my students are doing a concert based around foods. And so we're going to bring these creations back and we're going to perform them for parents. So something that we've done directly in the class that is actually tied to the curriculum, we're going to bring that back and perform it for parents. And sort of share sort of what we did in the process. So I'm taking lots of pictures, and I'm saving a lot of things, but they're going to save those word chains that they make in the next lesson, and we'll bring those back. I'm not going to tell them that now, but I'm going to save all their worksheets and we're going to bring them back later. So in this lesson, it's more just exploratory. It's understanding the cards, it's understanding the foods. It's trying to help them see the difference between on those 3 sound words. And just sort of get a better understanding. That's why I started out with find a sweet food, find a salty food, find a drink, find a dessert, find a whatever, just to get them familiar with the cards, to be really looking through and understanding, so that when we do start doing more things with the cards, they already know what foods are there, they already are familiar with the process, they've touched a lot of cards, they've seen a lot of things, and they know sort of what they might like. But that all starts with sort of more exploration in this specific lesson. like I said, if you want to see the whole Everything Stew lesson, all the things that are involved, I shared that video in 2019. I think it was 2019. And I linked it on the links page in case you're interested, in case you want to see that whole lesson. Okay, and a couple more things if you're interested. If you're like, this is a cool thing, I wonder if there's a book for that. Oh my gosh, there are so many cool books. One book that I really like that I've shared about before is this book called Freedom Soup. This is by Tammy Charles and Jacqueline Alcantara. Super cool book about, talking about, this is a great one for New Year, and it also talks about Haitian culture. It talks about, creating this food together, and ties in a lot of history and culture from Haiti. It's a really, really, really cool book. Definitely check this out from the library and see if this would be right for your classroom. Another fun one that would be really easy to add in, a couple really quick ones that are food related and are fun. This one is actually... It's like a leveled reader. I think I got it as a cast off when they were like getting new leveled readers. It's called Dad's Vegetable Soup. And it on every page, they're talking about different things that they might put in, how they make the soup. Now we have to cut up the vegetables. We need a big pot of water. We need a big ladle. But the thing I love about it is it has really great illustrations because, again, they're trying to teach kids to read. So they have simple words and then really good illustrations that help kids understand what those things are. So like ladle especially is nice. Salt and pepper, all the things that help kids understand what actually is going on in the story. You could absolutely tie in like the Very Hungry Caterpillar by Eric Carle because it eats, one thing at a time. If you wanted, you could go back in and then, clap out, find the rhythms for each of the foods. So like apple, pear, plums, strawberries, oranges, chocolate cake, ice cream cone, pickles, Swiss cheese, salami, lollipop, cherry pie, sausage, cupcake, watermelon. I mean, you could go through all those things. It's a super fun book, and I'm almost certain that you already have this in your school library. And then one more book that's really great that I've used for a bunch of other lessons but would work here too is called Chewy Louie. I've shared about that on another occasion. Really great book where the dog eats all sorts of things that he's not supposed to eat, like the deck or the table or the toys or whatever. And so that would be fun to sort of contrast, like what's a food, what's not, but then also like, can you find those rhythms of those other non-food words anyway? And it's like a cool extension. One more extension, I have like 3 or 4 interactive games that are really fun. Once I've done a lesson like this, I pull those games out, especially if I have a sub or some other reason where I have an off day or something where I want to bring in some really good content, looking back and trying again, sort of just another chance to try out that content, but maybe not something that maybe the whole grade doesn't get. That's okay. But you could do it the whole grade. Anyway, those interactive games, they work on iPads, they work on Chromebooks, they work on, smart boards. But it's a super fun way to get kids sort of practicing those rhythms in new ways. And I have a version, there's one called Grandma's Table, Helpful Grandma's Table, that is exactly themed around this sort of thing of food and getting it to the table. That's just these quarter notes, eighth notes, and quarter rests. I also made one recently that's 16th notes, so that's geared a little bit higher to older grades, but would work really great for extension and more practice too. So 16th note words and then 16th and 8th note pairs, which is also something my students struggle with. So it's fun to give them another chance to practice that content in a way that they really enjoy. Okay, so I hope this gave you some ideas of what you could maybe do if you wanted. It sort of showed you how my lessons have updated through the years and what's a little bit different and what's sort of the same. I'd love to get your feedback if any of you try out especially the Nutcracker lesson, like how did it work? Did it work for you? What did they struggle with? I'd love to hear that. And like I said at the beginning of the video, don't forget there's a sale on TPT today, Monday, and tomorrow, Tuesday. Tomorrow's the 29th, and it ends tomorrow at midnight. If you use the code CYBER22 at checkout, you get up to 25% off. There's a link to my store on the links page if you're interested. Okay, everyone, thanks so much for joining me on Monday night. I hope I'll see you again next Monday night, and have a great week with your students. Bye, everyone.